Ahoy everyone, thanks for checking out my video. This is going to be a little short since I want to get it out as soon as possible, so I apologize for any seemingly sloppy writing or editing. Today I wanted to do a little analysis of the reveal of Wave 6 of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass DLC for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe game and give my thoughts on everything. But first of all, I'd like to clarify that yes, I am doing fine with the whole Piranha Plant pipeline situation. I was pleasantly surprised at how concerned people were with my seemingly emotional reaction to its disconfirmation. And yes, that was my genuine reaction, by the way. I was really that emotionally invested in a sewer. I feel like I'm about to start crying, okay? But I'm really fine. You know, it's just one course, and Wave 6 is going to be peak regardless, especially with Rosalina's Ice World. And as far as I'm concerned, this essentially locks in pipeline for Mario Kart 10. It's just, when you're so passionate about a game, and you go for over a year and a half thinking that you can rest in the assumption that one pattern absolutely cannot be broken, the way they saved Ice World for the end of the trailer was bound to elicit a response. And by the way, we don't even know if Ice World took its spot necessarily. In the moment, it was the course that broke the news to me, so I automatically put the blame on it. 3DS Rosalina's Ice World legitimately killed off Pipeline, okay? This is our enemy. But for all we know, Ice World could have actually been our mystery retro taking one of the GameCube slots. Maybe Pipeline was CNSW_63 and Moonview replaced it. Heck, maybe Pipeline was sadly never planned, and placeholder theory was right all along. We'll have to wait for the codenames to come out before we can start pointing fingers, but there's very little chance that we'll ever know exactly what happened, so please put your pitchforks down. So with all that said, let's look at the courses we are getting. First off is the bellissimo Tour Rome Avanti. In my opinion, this is the best tour course, and it's looking like that position will probably carry over to the 3-master because by golly they cooked with it. And I thought the original felt dark and dramatic. They really did a number on it visually and audibly, and it looks like all the vital obstacles were carried over intact. The chain chomps in the Colosseum, and the fuzzies and rocky wrenches in the Piazza Navona. Speaking of which, I love how the BCP devs keep finding the most arbitrary ways to prove that they aren't putting in quote-unquote minimum effort. As we can see that those Rockies got a complete facelift, reverting them back to their original Super Mario Bros. 3 design for the first time in who knows how long. Since DS Airship Fortress was inspired by SMB3, it kinda makes me wonder whether this redesign was originally created for an airship remaster that got scrapped for some reason. But, you know, it's just a theory. Am I slightly bummed that they seemingly didn't insert any rolling chomps anywhere? Yes, I am. But that just would have been a cherry on top of what's already a marvelous city course sundae. And there's still room for them to possibly add a surprise or two, like in Piazza del Campidoglio or the Via Borghese Gardens. As for routing analysis, I'm going to put that off until the end of the video for Greg to take care of, since he presented the original route prediction series. But, spoiler alert, we were dead wrong about this and Madrid. And finally, before we move on, regarding cup placement, as I said I would be in my last Wave 6 prediction video, I am perfectly happy with how things turned out. It's funny to me how it took until now for some people to see in Rome Avanti the final destination atmosphere I saw in it all along, but at this point I wouldn't have it any other way, for the reasons I mentioned in that video, plus the fact that with the inclusion of Ice World, this is the perfect balance of skybox variety between the two cups. As an aside, the 200cc Baby Park Marathon will probably happen a week or two after Wave 6 comes out, since that seems to be the earliest that will work for my volunteers, and the update might bring a 96 race versus mode option to make it easier on us. The current plan is to upload the entire marathon on my second channel and edit it down to about 30 minutes of highlights for this one, so whatever you feel like watching, the option will be there. Next up is GameCube DK Mountain, a course that, as you may recall, I was expecting but wasn't particularly looking forward to seeing. Now that I've had some time to analyze it though, I'm optimistic. I said in the last prediction video that I wasn't sure whether the devs would do enough to make it play well, but just from the footage we have, I've already observed them putting in much more effort than I was anticipating. And I mean, even aside from the visuals, which are pretty darn nice. I like the new foliage on the mountainside, the fiery glow of the volcano top, the restored details on the barrel cannon, and the extra scenery in the distance. But gameplay-wise, not only did they add numerous DK barrels around the course and remove the railings from the sides of the bridge, although it still waves on its own as it does in Tour, but they also appear to have reverted the shapes of several of the big U-turns back to the pre-Tour version, which, combined with the extra abundance of boulders this time around, might just do the trick for me. They do seem to have blocked off the gap cut, but otherwise it looks like it's all upgrades. Now I'm genuinely excited to find out whether the course is saved. Going in, I really do want to like DK Mountain and 8 Deluxe, as I do in Double Dash and Tour, so keep an eye out for my big Mario Kart Deluxe ranking video, or you can keep in touch in my Discord server. Link is in the description. Musically, I don't have much to say. From the opening part, it honestly kinda sounds emptier than the original. I was hoping that they'd do a bit more with it. It still sounds like GameCube Jungle, which is pretty good but not the best, but hopefully it gets better as it goes along, and the sound effects of the preview video are just keeping me from hearing it in all its monkey glory. Acorn 3 is Wii Daisy Circuit, a placement that apparently makes sense to me and absolutely no one else. I mean, really, what's the problem here? It's good to separate it from Avanti, Acorn's other romantic city drive. It continues the trend of Wii courses going in the second half of their cups, and not only is it one of the more involved circuit courses, being a Star Cup track, but I really do think its romantic, nostalgic atmosphere makes it well suited to go towards the end of a set, even compared to DK Mountain, which is trickier and longer, but has much simpler, brighter presentation. Not that it should matter much anyway, since they're both in the penultimate cup regardless. Anyway, all that said, I don't really have any strong opinions to share here or any details to point out that we didn't already know about almost 2 months ago. I'm plenty pumped to race on Daisy Circuit with its cool turns and shortcuts. Visually it is very pretty, but definitely the weakest of the wave, which is kinda funny considering how impressed I was with it when it was first unveiled. The music remake has grown on me, especially now that we've heard more of it without the announcer man speaking over it, but it's not blown me away or anything. So like with DKM, the jury's still out on that. And lastly, as a track pick, I'm still a certified Daisy simp, and I still maintain that there were better options, like Dry Dry Ruins or 3DS Shy Guy Bazaar, but it's really not that bad. Mario Kart Deluxe sampling circuits from every other game in the series is cool, and helps keep the retro variety high. The only major problem I'd have with DC is if it's what they chose to take Pipeline's place, but again, we'll never know exactly which track took over for it, if any, or even why it wasn't included. And finally, rounding off the Acorn Cup is the lovely Tour Original lap-changing archipelago course, Piranha Plant Cove, which, may I remind you, I've pretty much always firmly predicted for this spot, aside from briefly calling it for Cherry 4 back when I was first revealed. This is the course that I think I have the least things to say about here. I mean, we all knew it was coming, this placement makes perfect sense, the routing appears to be precisely what any sane person was predicting, and it most certainly looks and sounds like Piranha Plant Cove. Granted, the visual upgrades are insane, with this probably being in the top 5 best glow-ups in the entire pass, but other than that, it seems to still be the same old low S-tier non-city we all know and love. Even though I'd say it's a little bit overrated as a course, Cove does hold a special place in my heart as the first track I ever played in Tour, which I'm now addicted to, and I fondly remember staying up super late for the reveal of what I expected to be an Orlando City course and being completely floored by the Cove teaser. The music also has an inherently nostalgic feel to it, which never fails to take me back to the days of Waluigi Stadium in Wave 3, Airship Fortress as the last DS slot, Mushroom Bridge vs Mushroom City, Mob_Donkey Kong, and the many months spent waiting for more ID gaps to open that never did. Piranha Plant Cove really feels like an adventure, and that's exactly what this booster course pass has been for me, an adventure. So when I play it in Mario Kart Deluxe, I wouldn't be surprised if I just get so overwhelmed with emotion that I can't focus well on the actual race. Now, opening up the final and possibly best cup in the entire game is the Excelente Tour Madrid Drive. Again, I'll be having Greg take care of the route analysis at the end of this video. Firstly, in terms of obstacles, the Piranha Plant in the Prado Museum, the Thwomps in the Market of San Miguel, at least one of the Wigglers in the Plaza Mayor, and of course, the Shoe Goombas in the Santiago Bernabeu Stadium have all been carried over. The Goombas on the streets of Madrid 1 are also retained, albeit in a different spot much closer to the stadium. It appears that the canopies in the plaza are set up like they are in Madrid Drive 3, so unless they somehow move around between laps, unfortunately the Wiggler will not be able to walk around the statue like he does in Tour. The footballs in the stadium are actual obstacles now. A change that, combined with the addition of dash panels, makes that section a lot more interesting than it was before, so that's a dub. We haven't seen the Madrid Atocha railway station yet, aside from this glance at its exterior where it doesn't seem like much has changed, so only time will tell what they did with its obstacles and direction of travel. Speaking of this glance, promotional material has made it abundantly clear that we are in fact traversing Madrid Drive 2R, which is unfortunate but understandable, and thankfully they do appear to have added some kind of bridge or staircase here where there used to be an awkward geyser jump, so even if the routing choice is lazy, at least the execution isn't. In terms of visuals, for some reason I'm one of very few people who think they did really good here. I'm not saying it's the best by any means. I mean, the details on the buildings are pretty simple and a lot of the trees aren't great. But honestly, BCP tracks set in broad daylight are usually a lot worse. From where I'm standing, Madrid Drive nails the extremely bright, cloudless summer day aesthetic like very few other courses in the entire game, thanks in particular to the reflection work from things like the Alfonso XII monument and the tiling in the plaza. And as for the music, guys, this is just peak incarnate. Just from this opening bit, they did everything I wanted from a Madrid cover and more, especially if it was going to be in Spiny. It's extra dramatic, extra bouncy, and extra Spanish. Here's hoping they cooked similarly with the museum and stadium variants. So overall, needless to say, I'm pretty pleased with Madrid. It's probably not going to be the new best tour course or anything, but it'll absolutely be up there among my favorites. Next, it would seem that Nintendo was not content with just one surprise in Wave 6, since quite a few of us figured that one out, and they decided to be a little silly and throw the other most common mystery retro prediction in at the same time. Congratulations to everyone who pointed out the fact that it was weird that we were expecting the final wave to only wind up with one Special Cup track. Back in the day when I was predicting 3DS Rosalina's Ice World, I always imagined it being Acorn 2. After all, it's not the most difficult or dramatic course around, and that would have separated it from the only other Super Mario Galaxy-inspired space course here. But since Rome and Cove are both in Acorn, this is the best placement we could have hoped for, and I think it's really neat. It nicely fills in for Vancouver Velocity as the nighttime snowy course for the wave, and even in the game's final cup, it's nice to have a course with a little bit more subdued presentation. It's also fitting that the two Wave 6 retros hailing from Special Cups are both in Spiny, and that the other Spiny retro is a Bowser Castle, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Ice World is great, I've always been a fan, and for the haters out there, it would appear that they've worked to actively make the course better. So far we've seen a new shortcut at the end and a new half-pipe on this one bend that you can just barely make out from this footage here. I was wrong about its placement, but I'll gladly take the W for proposing the idea in my original prediction video. It's also been mentioned that Ice World has a potential to include a half-pipe along one particular section of it, and there's no denying that the BCP developers have a thing for half-pipes. In the visuals department, Ice World looks absolutely stunning, which once again seems to be a somewhat controversial opinion. For the people saying these look like tour screenshots or Wave 1 or 2 levels, I'm honestly not sure if we're even looking at the same thing here. People have tried to use its visuals as additional evidence for the course replacing Pipeline at the last minute or something. But not only is it extremely implausible that any changes to the Wave 6 lineup happened later than about 4th quarter 2022, but if anything, graphically the odd one out here should be Daisy Circuit. And at least with Madrid you could point out a few rough spots, but barring the sparingly textured underwater section that still has gorgeous lighting, Rosalina's Ice World has nothing of the sort. And finally, for the music, so far it sounds very faithful, which I like a lot. All of the changes they've made to the percussion and mixing just serve to improve the song and flesh it out better, making it even more out of this world than it was before. All in all, Pipeline be darned, this course seems like it's gone through the ultimate underdog arc, and I am totally here for it. From an often forgotten Nitro in an often forgotten game, to just another Tour 3DS port, to gaining a sliver of hope with the announcement of the BCP, and then finally coming in clutch literally just when all hope was lost, beautifully splashing into the final cup of the game with alterations that'll hopefully win over even the most stubborn of Ice World haters. Moving on to Spiny 3, and real quick, let's acknowledge how well this bit from my last prediction video aged. Also, I should note that I no longer believe that being an ultimately fairly simple Super Nintendo course stops it from fitting this spot. Because, while it is a little simple, not only did that not stop Merry Mountain in Wave 3 before it, but I also feel its appearance in Mario Kart Tour doesn't do the best job of representing the sheer drama and danger that the course will have when it's ported to 8 Deluxe. I wish I hadn't spent so much time in that video on the length theory, since Rosalina's Ice World is fairly average in length, even though it did end up applying to DK Mountain and Daisy Circuit. But in any case, I'm proud of myself for taking at least one unpopular W with this wave in predicting that Super Nintendo Bowser Castle 3 would be the penultimate course of 8 Deluxe. Listening to Nocturne always pays off. As an aside, funnily enough, the main thing about Wave 6 I never agreed with him on was the city placement debate, as he was a reluctant Madrid for Spiny believer until just a few days before the Wave 6 reveal. We both should have known better. Anyway, to be honest, I think this BC3 remake just speaks for itself. It's dramatic, dangerous, and almost unrecognizable from any of its previous appearances in the best way possible. The scaling is great, the lava texture they went with is fantastic, and I adore how so much of the road was replaced with grates, just to keep you aware of how close you are to falling to a horrific death at any moment. The piercing sunset skybox with an orange to white gradient combined with those cartoony clouds unironically goes really hard for some reason. And in case you were wondering, yes, the boned piranha plants are retained. Regarding the music, to use the words of Polly001, and I quote, "They understood the assignment." There's something really funny to me about how the Nintendo arrangers listened to that silly chiptune Super Nintendo song and interpreted that sound font as the most insane, shredding monster metal guitars you've ever heard. I especially like the intro, where they play the first note, hold for a moment, and then speed through the rest of the incline. It sounds ridiculously over the top, but there's some very tasteful musical decisions on display so far. In conclusion, Bowser Castle 3 appears to be another common Wave 6 W, and as if that wasn't enough, Nintendo decided to save the best for last. Which, much like BC3, shouldn't need much introduction. With Wii Rainbow Road, I can offer a few nitpicks. I miss the transparency of the road, as well as the flowing pinpricks of light and the stars along the sides, and the anti-grav along the whole track and added guardrails in some parts seems like it might make the course a little bit easier than would be preferable. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's still Wii Rainbow Road. In the transition from Tour, the ramps around the big holes were re-added and the shape of the mandatory half-pipe jump was reverted back. And from what I can tell, the scaling isn't but a little bit bigger than that of the original. So all in all, it is very much still the Rainbow Road you know and love, with several tight turns and tricky cuts, and a color palette that manages to absolutely nail the balance of the original's brightness and Tour's vibrancy. In the music department, you'll have to forgive me, as I want to hold off when listening to it closely until I can hear it in-game for the first time, to make it as magical of a first experience as possible. Ultimately, for me personally, it feels rather pointless to mutter and complain about all the little things they could have done better and all the unfortunate minor downgrades to this course when what we have is quite literally out of this world. A phenomenal finale to a phenomenal game, and an incredible I told you so moment for those of us who unwaveringly stuck by the course ever since the prefixes came out, in spite of the numerous scares and doubters and deniers of these last 20 months. There was no other course that could go here, and there was no other place where this course could go. And no, of course no one took me up on the Wii Rainbow Road bet. I never expected anyone to. All it was meant to do was to show that everyone has at least a little bit of brain. No free Switch game for me. Now, it's tradition at this point for me to go through each wave with my siblings first as soon as it comes out, so there sadly won't be a launch stream or initial reaction video or anything if you were hoping for that. But I am currently in the middle of scripting a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe All Courses tier list video, in addition to one other enormous Mario Kart related project that may not be ready until December or even January if I do it right. So even with Wave 6 revealed, I still have at least 2 more 8 Deluxe videos on the horizon, and after that, who knows? I'll do my best to cover anything major that happens for the series, but my life is getting pretty busy, so don't get used to my current cadence. Before I hand things off to Greg, I guess I should mention the other Wave 6 update stuff. The endgame music player and the new Mii costumes are pretty neat. I'll probably be the only one who actually uses the jukebox, depending on how it handles music variants. I might use a couple of the costumes, but I don't usually play as Mii's anyway, so hashtag JFK. And if you're not interested in the route analysis, I guess you can hop off now. Thanks again for stopping by and joining me for the end part of this Booster Course Pass adventure. My only regret is not starting Mario Kart Deluxe coverage sooner, but with that, I'll hand it off to Greg now.
Wow.